This is the 2025 Mercedes G-Wagon. The legendary 4x4, famous for its ruggedness, off-road prowess, and timeless design, has returned, and in a number of flavors, including diesel, petrol, and perhaps most curiously of all, as a G580 with EQ technology. Or, to put it another way, it's the fully electric G-Wagon. Say what? I shouldn't be that surprised. Mercedes have been teasing this car for years now. They've shown us a concept car. They told us to expect it. And yet, for some reason in my mind, I just didn't really think it was going to be real. It just sounds a bit sort of ludicrous, doesn't it? And yet here I am behind the wheel of an actual G580. And it is very, very real. The G580 doesn't use a fancy new chassis. It's got the same old school ladder frame underpinnings that have served as the backbone of the G-Wagon since GOD was a toddler. This is a G that's been injected with electric parts rather than an electric car that's been dressed up to look like a G. Or at least that's what Mercedes want us to believe. You see, they're so keen for people to think of this as a proper G-Wagon that they've infused it with a whole bunch of extra G goodies that make it difficult to disassociate from the proper diesel and petrol G-Wagons. They include the oddly appealing G-Raw. Listen to this. The slightly mad G-Steer, which lets you turn tight corners, and the hilariously visual G-Turn, which lets you spin around on the spot. We'll judge each of these on their own merit a bit later to see if they're G-Enius or just G-Imix, but for the moment, let me give you the basic G-ist. Instead of an internal combustion engine, the G580 with EQ technology, to give it its full name, uses 4 separate electric motors, each one having its own separate transmission and each one driving an individual wheel. Each motor makes 146 horsepower. When all 4 are on song, they make a total of 587 horsepower, while torque is rated at a whopping 1,164 Newton meters. What does that feel like? Well, it's slightly difficult to explain exactly what I mean, so I think I better just show you. So for this, I'm going to pull over, and I'm actually going to activate the G-Raw sound experience. There we go. Will it rev? I'll put it into neutral. No revving. There's also no launch control, so I'm just gonna hold the brake and then boost it and then send it. Oh, there we go. Ooh! Ooh! Okay, so first of all, the noise is there. You can hear that. And also, the front end picks up and shoves its way forward. Almost like it's doing a wheelie, just as you expect a proper G-Wagon to do. That's fun. It'll do 0 to 62 in 4.7 seconds. That's not quite as quick as the V8 powered G63, but it's certainly quick enough. What's more, with more torque than the G63, the G580 feels more responsive in gear. You never have to wait for the car to downshift or build turbo boost pressure before it unleashes its full fury. Range is a claimed 285 miles, although in my hands it was probably closer to a little over 200. Charging is done at an okay 200 kilowatts, fast enough to give you 106 miles in 15 minutes of charging, but some will have preferred a faster charge speed with a battery clocking in at such a mighty 116 kilowatt hours. Regardless, the G580 is instantly recognizable as a G-Wagon, with the same boxy proportions as the petrol and diesel variants. But look closely and there are clues that this version has more to it than meets the eye. Before we go any further, I've got a very important message. Autotrader are giving away a brand new electric car. No, not this G580, and in fact not this miniature G580 either, but it does have something to do with this miniature toy car. That's right, we're hiding 1,000 of these toy cars in cities across the UK between the 24th of February and the 9th of March 2025. Yep, I know it sounds crazy, but we are hiding 100 of these in various cities, including Manchester, Edinburgh, Bristol, Leeds, Glasgow, followed by Birmingham, Liverpool, Cardiff, Newcastle, and London. If you find one, you've basically got a 1 in 1,000 chance of winning a Hyundai Ioniq 5N. If you find one, scan the QR code, post it on Instagram stories, tag Autotrader, and you could be in with a chance of winning a 5N. Good luck. First things first, listen to this. Can you hear that? The car's making this deep kind of electronic rumbling sound. Not quite a V8, but a menacing little reminder of the G580's presence. Very cool. Anyway, speaking of design, this grille can be had in a couple of different flavors. You can either have this traditional looking multi-slat grille or a smoother alternative which looks a bit more kind of flush and typical of what you get on an electric vehicle. I'm happy to say that in the UK, at the moment, we don't get the flush grille, we get the normal grille, and I think that looks a lot better, so that's a thumbs up from me. The other way to spot a G580 is from the bonnet. So you get this big bulbous bonnet, which is a bit more beefy than what you get on the petrol or diesel cars. And apparently that's been done in order to improve aerodynamic efficiency. And it also looks pretty cool. Speaking of aero efficiency, we've also got a newly designed A-pillar with this kind of aero cladding, and also this lip across the top of the car is a little bit more aerodynamically efficient to reduce the noise inside the cabin when you're traveling at motorway speeds. Around the side, we got aero wheels, which don't look too bad. Sometimes Mercedes can be guilty of giving us aero wheels which don't look great, but these actually look pretty cool. We've also got the big flared wheel arches, blue along this strip just here. We all know electricity's blue, that's why. The EQ badge, of course. And then, for the first time, we've also got keyless entry. Normally, on a G-Wagon, you've got to press the button on the key to unlock the car, but now, as long as you've got the key on your person, you can put your hand in the handle and it will unlock automatically. Plus, this is a cool touch. The actual button has a little G logo on it. That is very nice. And let's see if it does the noise. Yep, the G-Wagon slam is still very much in place. We'll do the back door as well, because why not? Sounds good, doesn't it? If you've ever been inside a G-Wagon, you will have noticed how hard it is to close the door, and that's because of the pressure inside this boxy cabin. Mercedes have somewhat of a solution. They've engineered in this little rear vent to reduce the internal air pressure, and they've made it larger on the G580 than before, but the car can be prone sometimes to not closing properly. You've got to give it some real welly. Also on the G500, you've also got this air curtain on the side, which allegedly increases aerodynamic efficiency, maybe gives you a bit more range. And on that subject, we've also got the charge port at the back. Open it up, it lights up. We've got 7 kilowatt AC, 11 kilowatt AC, and 200 kilowatt DC. Not the fastest in the world, but not bad. And then around the back, you'll have spotted that Mercedes have reinvented the wheel. It's now a square. Only joking. This isn't actually the spare wheel. This is what they call the design box. And you open it up, and what you get is the charge cable. What a cool solution. That is such a nice touch. If you don't want the design box with your charge cable, you can opt for a proper spare wheel. But for me, in an EV, yeah, that's a great solution.
Inside, the boot isn't the biggest, but it is the same size as the ICE Gs, so it's to be expected. The rear cabin space isn't the biggest either, with only satisfactory legroom, although headroom is better than most thanks to the tall roof. Mod cons include rear climate controls, a set of USB ports, and privacy pockets. At the front, it's exactly as you'd expect from a G-Wagon. Spacious with good materials, lovely ambient lighting behind the circular vents, and all the familiar G hallmarks, including a chunky grab handle. The new car has also been updated with some new bits, including the latest Mercedes steering wheel, the one with the annoying capacitive buttons, a new infotainment system, and a very good Burmester audio setup, plus controls for your off-road modes and new screens related to the EV powertrain.
Okay, so it looks like a G, feels like a G, does it drive like a G? I've got to say, it very much does. It's got this chunky, robust feel to it, which is what you want your G-Wagon to feel like. And this has all the hallmarks you'd expect of a Geländewagen. The only real difference for me is that the suspension, despite being essentially the same hardware, feels like it's been tuned differently. It feels slightly softer, a bit more plush than the G63 or the G500. That's not a bad thing though. That actually makes this a slightly better daily. It's a comfortable car. Refinement is on point, as you'd expect. It is an EV, so you're gonna get that. It's incredibly smooth. It's nowhere near as clunky or as noisy as a standard G-Wagon. And I'm not saying those traits are bad, I'm just pointing out that this, again, fantastic daily. It's quiet as well. All those little tweaks they made to the aerodynamics mean that wind noise, very, very minimal, even at motorway speeds. Road noise, again, kept to a minimum. This means you can drive this car every day feeling comfortable, fresh, and not like you're being beaten up by a military vehicle. This new G is also safer than ever before, and not just because of the hardware, because of new software. It will beep at you to make sure you're keeping within the speed limit. You can turn that off quite easily, thankfully. It will also keep you in lane to stop you from crashing. And if you are about to have a crash and your passenger is seated in some weird position, it will reposition the seat to a more acceptable level and also tighten your seatbelt in preparation for the impact. And if it really thinks you're about to have an accident, it will actually play a sound through the speakers to shock your ears into a reflex action that will cause the stapedius muscles in your eardrum to contract, limiting the amount of extra noise you can let into your eardrum. Yeah, bizarrely, it makes a loud noise to reduce the impact from other loud noises, including presumably your own screams. They've thought of everything. Well, almost everything. They've forgotten one very important thing in this 4x4, and that is giving it the ability to tow.
It sounds mental, I know, but it's all down to weights. In the UK, normal drivers with a normal license can only drive vehicles up to 3,500 kilograms. Anything more than that, and you need a Category C license for medium weight vehicles. Because the G580 has a curb weight of 3,085 kilograms, that only leaves 415 kilograms to play with until you reach that 3,500 kilogram limit. Hence, 415 kilograms is the car's maximum permissible payload. In other words, the most it can carry if you have a normal driving license.
And that puts G580 owners in a slightly precarious position because in the UK, the average fully grown man weighs around 85 kilograms. You've got 5 seats in this car, but if you were to carry 5 average sized or weight men from the UK, their total weight would combine to be about 425 kilograms, and that is above this car's maximum payload. If the police found out you're carrying 5 geezers in a G580, they're gonna know there's a good chance that you're doing it illegally without the appropriate license. And that to me just sounds, it's just absurd.
Basically, it's arguably too heavy for the UK. If you can't safely and legally carry a car full of normal passengers or tow, this might not be the car for you. Get the petrol or diesel versions instead. However, as fate would have it, the G580 might be slightly better than its diesel and petrol counterparts in one key area: off-road. So, I headed to an extremely muddy, disused Scottish quarry to put it through its paces.
Okay, for this first obstacle, I think what I'll do is put the car into low range. Low range is a bit like another gear, but in reverse. So instead of going from first to second, you're almost going from first to -1, if that makes sense, to give the car a bit more power and control as you go through hills and descents and things like that. So I'm gonna go into rock mode and then activate drive program. Then I'm gonna go into low range. There we go, low range activated. Then into drive. And there we are, we are now in slow off-road mode. And we can tackle this gentle little slope. Shouldn't be any bother for the big G. Nice, no issue whatsoever. Now, eagle-eyed viewers might have spotted I've got different number plates on this car. I've had to swap into a different black G580, and that's because this car has the all-terrain tires on. We didn't want to really risk this with the normal tires, but apart from that, the cars are absolutely identical, and we'll see exactly how much trouble we can get into. Right, next obstacle is some water. There it is, nice muddy water. Apparently the wading depth on the G580 is 850 millimeters, and that's more than you get on the ICE cars. They're actually 700 millimeters, but look at this. Yep, nice and deep. No issue whatsoever. No leaks, which is always a good sign. And we're through. Absolutely no bother. One of the big things you have to remember when you're off-roading is your ground clearance. And the G580 has a 250 mil ground clearance, so you shouldn't be grounding out too much on the terrain below you. But if you do, it shouldn't be a massive problem because the battery is actually armor plated. The plating is partly made of carbon and is 26 millimeters thick, so we shouldn't have a problem in terms of damaging the underfloor. And look at that. gone up the side of that little bank there. The car can go up to 35 degrees on one side. That's pretty wild. One of the most interesting things about the G580 off-road is it's got this rock crawl function, which is basically like a cruise control function where the car effectively drives by itself. So I've got that activated right now. I haven't got my feet on any of the pedals. The car's just maintaining a steady speed. And there are 3 different levels. There is slow, which I'm in right now, variable, which maintains a speed that it thinks is appropriate, up to about 6 miles an hour, and then fast, which goes slightly above 6 miles an hour. But right now I'm cruising along, feet on no pedals whatsoever, and the car is just figuring it out all by itself. If I need to go a bit faster, I can pull the right-hand paddle and it speeds up, or slower, I pull the left-hand paddle and off it goes. Right, I've got full lock on. Will I make it round? Yeah, that's looking good.
Unlike the ICE versions of the G-Wagon, the 580 doesn't have any physical diff locks that lock pairs of wheels or axles into rotating at the same speeds in order to maximize traction. But because each wheel has its own motor, these wheels can lock in at specific speeds while maintaining different speeds relative to each other. So you get all the traction of an ICE car, but with a better turning circle and extra precision due to the car effectively having an off-road cruise control function.
Now, this very steep obstacle coming up in front means that I can't see what's in front of me, but the car has cameras mounted on the front, which means I get a pretty decent view through the cameras, and that's given me full confidence to tackle this particular obstacle. Basically hanging by my seatbelt right now, but the car is maintaining a steady speed, hill descent. That's magic. And if I want to speed up, pull the right paddle, it increases the speed between variable and fast. It's just soaking it all up. No issues. Look at the state of this right here. You wouldn't take a car through there, but I'm cruising through it. Oh, are we stuck? Are we stuck? We might be stuck. I think we're stuck, so I'm gonna back up a little bit. Actually, no, let me try and go forward. Let me try going forward and see if we get any traction. No, we got nothing. So I am gonna go back, carry a bit of momentum up that. I did say it looked a bit gnarly, but here we go. Will the G manage? Oh, not that time. I'm gonna go a bit further back. Carry a tiny bit more speed. Go on, girl. Go on, girl. Look at that. No bother. It is so muddy and so sticky here, and yet this thing is just taking it in its stride.
And that brings me to the G580's party piece, G-Turn. The idea is that if you found yourself at a dead end with limited space and no inclination to do a multi-point turn, or if you just want to show off in front of your mates, you can spin around on a dime.
Right, so what you do is you press that button, hold the right paddle, foot on the accelerator, and the car just spins around for you right on the spot. I think I'll keep going, I quite like that. And then when you're done being dizzy, you drive off. How cool is that?
Another big advantage of having 4 electric motors is the fact you can spin different wheels at different speeds. The G580 makes use of this with G-Steer, where it basically locks the inside wheel, so when you turn, the car turns around a tighter axis. It massively reduces the turning circle and feels like a low-speed power slide.
But what do we think of the G580? What's the verdict? Well, it's a very cool car, very interesting technology, but we've got to address the elephant in the room, and that is, it's too heavy, isn't it? This is a 5-seater car that will potentially land you in hot water for carrying 5 passengers, and that to me is just nuts. And it begs the question, is the G-Class the right candidate for electrification with today's technology? That's a question you guys might need to answer. Anyway, that aside, I've got to say, what a brilliant piece of kit. It's fantastic. Would I buy one over the admittedly slightly more expensive G63? Oh, probably not. I'd still get the V8 personally. However, you can't ignore the fact that this car has so much going for it.
It's a better off-roader than the petrol G-Wagon. It might be cheaper to run for some of us, and overall it's probably a slightly better daily. Of course, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it is still very, very cool.